All right. Can you hear me? Can you see me?
Both. Perfect.
Perfect. Well, I'm really excited to be here today. Thank you so much for the invitation. And I'm excited to present our work for Cosmic Medical, which stands for, as you can see, Collective Open Source Medical Innovations for COVID. And I'll be talking as well more broadly about open social innovation and the method behind the work that we're doing at Cosmic and really our value system and how we're bringing that to life. So you can see in these images, our work encompasses a range of projects, all related to COVID and clinical settings and the needs that have arisen in the age of the COVID pandemic. So again, thank you so much. It was really exciting to hear from you as well that, you know, we've got this nice tight group today. So I wanted to leave a lot of time for question and answer. So feel free. I've kept the presentation relatively short, and then we can have more of a kind of open discussion. But as well, within the presentation, I wanted to just leave some room for kind of interactivity and to maintain a kind of dialogue as we go. So let's start with our mission, though, because this is really what draws everyone to Cosmic, and this is what keeps us as a network of volunteers, but skilled volunteers with backgrounds in technology and medicine. Our mission is to create abundant access to medical equipment through these open source design solutions. And we think that that's the best vehicle for really changing healthcare and providing healthcare, effective healthcare to those who need it. I just want to, I wanted to start, if you can take a moment and kind of sit back and think back to March, February or March this year when the pandemic struck. I want everyone to just think of one word, you know, amidst the confusion, amidst the uncertainty. How were you feeling at that time? What were you thinking about? What's one word that would describe where you were at? And maybe we can take a second and just kind of recount where we all were mentally, emotionally, and socially in March.
And you can put it in the chat just as I did. And Patrick, probably you can read from the chat. Sometimes it's more comfortable just to type in the chat.
Perfect. That's a great idea. I'll open the chat up. Yeah, so we have some responses pouring in, and, you know, panic, reinvention, you know, oh shit, it's kind of more panic. Yeah, we have more getting your shit together, right? It's like, I need to reevaluate, you know, that's another type of sort of reinvention, or like the need for organization. So during this time, right, there was all this uncertainty, and we came together. We came together, and it really started with Dr. Chris Guan, who created the opportunity for. I'm just going to jump ahead to this slide. Cosmic all started with one, you know, WhatsApp message. And I think this is so typical, right? We have these communication platforms, and our ability to create innovation and to coordinate effort is really tied closely to those communication platforms. So Dr. Chris Guan reached out to two of his students, and he said, you know, sort of, he was at a meeting at the Vancouver General Hospital where they were discussing their capacity to respond and their capacity in terms of medical devices specifically, and then what they would do when they reached the limits of their capacity. And he thought, you know, why are we sitting around and waiting to sort of run out of supplies when we could be producing those supplies, when we could be developing methods to transform what we already have in Vancouver into those supplies that we need. And so he was kicking around this idea, who's interested in hacking together a super low cost ventilator support machine for the existing hospital systems in Vancouver are overwhelmed, so that we could scale up the capacity. And that kind of brings us back. I'll give a short about me. So right now I'm working or volunteering as the executive director at Cosmic Medical. I have a background in electrical engineering, and I've worked in startups. I've worked in for large firms and research institutions as well. I'm really interested in biomimicry and nanotechnology. That was my specialization at university. And in 2018, a group that I was working with won this biodesign challenge. I've been involved in the circular economy in Vancouver, and throughout all of that, I've spent a lot of time exploring how can open source and distributed design really reshape our social systems and provide access and solve some of these huge super wicked problems that we have. So I just want to, we have this nice video. I just want to share, I think it gives a good introduction to kind of Cosmic and some of the projects, and then we can jump a little bit more in depth.
Oops, no sound.
No sound.
No sound. Okay. Has anyone a quick solution for this?
Yeah, you need to turn the sound up on your machine where you are.
Okay, I'm getting sound. I need to route it, yeah, but I'm not sure. How about
What's the sound on there?
Patrick.
So the sound is coming out my end. I can send the link maybe, and then we could just like take.
It's interesting because before you started talking, we had sound. So unintentionally it started playing, and then it transmitted the sound.
Okay, wait. So can you can still hear me now?
Yeah.
But you just can't get the sound from the YouTube video.
Yes.
Perhaps if I try it on, I have it on YouTube. I have the link. I can post the link in the chat, and then people could watch it elsewhere if I can't route sound in. I'm not sure. Maybe that's the best quick method.
I don't know how you did it before, but it transmitted sound. When you prepared it, it transmitted the sound.
Okay, and then it stopped. Oh, can you hear this sound?
No.
No. That's quite strange. And this one also still no sound.
No sound.
Okay, sorry about this. I'll share here's the link in the chat. Perhaps.
Let me see if
just wanted to showcase, because it's kind of a nice video of some of the Cosmic projects in action. So yeah, let's take 2 minutes, or it's 4 minutes long.
Let me see. Maybe
take a
I
second.
can share it.
We are fortunate that we have not.
Oh, now we can hear something.
Yeah, I can hear it.
From COVID-19. I'm Dr. Philip Edgecombe,
Can you see it?
Of Cosmic, the collective open source medical innovations for COVID-19 organization. Our mission.
Would you like to screen share?
Abundant access to medical equipment through open source design solutions.
Which screen did we hear now? Did we hear mine?
Yes, I believe we were hearing yours. Here, why don't you hop on screen share for a second?
In Canada, we are fortunate
that works?
we have not run out of ventilators, but people are still dying from COVID-19. I'm Dr. Philip Edgecombe, and I'm a co-founder of COSMIC, the collective open source medical innovations for COVID-19 organization. Our mission is to create abundant access to medical equipment through open source design solutions. We are committed to sharing our knowledge and our know-how with the world. So in order for you to see what we are working on, let me take you on a tour of our research field hospital. So here, we are addressing the critical shortages of masks and face shields for frontline healthcare workers. Our solution is to modify a snorkel mask by adding an adapter for an air filter to make it a reusable N95 mask and face shield. Simple and effective. The snorkel mask can also be used to help patients breathe. This is important because if you get COVID-19, you will have difficulty breathing. That is why the rest of our projects are focused on that same issue. They are bubble helmet, gravity ventilator, clinical respiratory support, and bag valve mask ventilation. In this room, we are helping the patient breathe with our bubble helmet, which is delivering positive pressure oxygen to the patient without letting any of the infectious exhaled air leak out into the environment. Our bubble helmet is designed to be comfortable for patients and simple to manufacture. The gravity ventilator, or G-Vent for short, is our ultra-low cost, easy to manufacture open source ventilator. Its patent pending design uses gravity, water seal technology, and positive pressure air that is readily available in most hospitals. To provide pressurized air in unconventional hospital settings, and in our particular case, to the snorkel mask, bubble helmet, and the G-Vent ventilator, we designed and built a portable, easily manufacturable, and scalable clean air supply system. Filtered air is provided by an industrial fan, and it reduces infection risk by inactivating the COVID particles in the exhaled air. Finally, for situations where a ventilator simply isn't available, our bag valve mask device automates the process of repeatedly squeezing a bag to push air into the lungs of patients to help them breathe for short periods of time. We hope that you found that tour compelling. Our COSMIC organization is entirely volunteer-driven and funded by donations. Each of our volunteers has their own story. One of our donors is the Arts Club Theatre Company. They generously donated the space in the BMO Theatre Center for our research field hospital. Now we need your help to share our innovative open source devices with the people that desperately need them. So what does that look like? We need financial support, volunteers, and we need you to share our designs and our story with the world. Every dollar and every person helps. Let's tackle the global COVID-19 pandemic together.
Great. So that was another one of the principals from COSMIC, Dr. Philip Edgecombe presenting, and I will just re-share my screen here. But yeah, so I hope that gave you kind of an overview of the projects that we've been working on at COSMIC, and a bit of the history as well, because so much of what COSMIC is, I think, is tied and contingent upon that time and place in history. I think we were all inspired at the time. When I think back to March, the word that comes to mind for me is really action. And how can I use my skills as an electrical engineer, as someone, as an open source innovation organizer? How could I use my skills to respond in a way that has a meaningful impact on the world? And then we'll go through the team's projects again, talk about the innovation process, talk about how that fits into the open source, kind of the global open source picture. And then I've left plenty of time so that we could have a more general discussion and Q&A. So just to recap, it all started with a gravity ventilator, this novel ventilator design that instead of squeezing that bag, like the bag valve mask showed, and that's how many ventilators are working, this one uses this tank here which is full of water, to deliver a constant pressure. So because of weights on the top of the system, gravity is pushing down on it, it ends up being a really safe and effective way to deliver constant inspiratory pressure to patients. And it can't fail in the ways that other systems can fail. So it can't deliver too much pressure. The snorkel mask is another example of kind of what I view as combinatorial innovation. It's taking existing things that we have around and combining them in new ways to create new technology where new needs are met. So we have the need in hospitals for HEPA filters. There are these cheap snorkel masks, or relatively cheap for snorkeling and diving. And a simple conversion turns that into a safe clinical device. The bubble helmet is a sort of a different but similar device. It's how can you isolate the patient from the ER that they're in while providing them air. And so you kind of put their whole head in a bubble of clean air that's filtered, and that isolates them. And a huge focus for this team was on manufacturability and on ergonomics as well. So being really conscious of the patient and their need to be able to move around, to lie down, to sit up, to lean back, and how can that all be comfortable? Because the existing systems were relatively uncomfortable around the neck. So
Patrick,
yes.
Would you mind if I asked a question?
Of course. No, yeah, please.
On those two, you've got available elsewhere for anyone to use with a disclaimer waiver.
Yes.
That sounds a bit legal here.
Yeah. I think let's save this one. Let's put a pin in this one and get back to it, because there are definitely legal implications and aspects. And that is an important part as well of the story. Although I don't have a slide on it, I will come back to that. Let's get back to that. And then the clinical respiratory support. So it's all well and fine to have these devices at the patient level, but you need the infrastructure for them to plug into. And that's what this is about. So hospitals in Canada have hospitals around the world in developed nations, and also in developing nations, I guess, have air supplies that deliver oxygen and clean air at the right humidity levels to patients. But what happens when you run out of space, right? How can you scale up that part of the infrastructure? And that's what clinical respiratory support was responding to. And this project has transitioned into an oxygen concentrator unit as well, because the oxygen supply globally, the oxygen supply chains often can't reach the places that they're needed. And we've seen that as a big challenge. So how can we take the oxygen from the air? How can we purify it so that we can then adjust the concentrations and deliver that to patients in need? So those are the main projects, and they're all open source. We've shared all of the files, we've shared all the designs, we've shared all the work that was put into them. So the kind of our patent, is yours now, right? And all of our intellectual property is shared openly. So I can share this slide deck after, and you can go there, or if you go to GitHub at Cosmic Medical, you can see all of the design files as well. But to come back to who we are and how this came to be, we're a collaboration network, right? None of this would be possible without the information tools that we use today. During this time, it was originally a WhatsApp message. It transitioned very quickly to a Slack and a Google Drive, and the collaborative tools that allow people in dispersed locations to edit at the same time really are the basis for this rapid technological development. But we're also primarily based in Vancouver because hardware doesn't have that same kind of collaborative access yet, right? If you need to modify the physical atoms of the devices that we're working on, if we need to connect the actual tubes, you have to be there in person to do that. So that's been an interesting theme throughout our development. Is there's some work that can be done remotely, there's some work that cannot. But we're entirely volunteer powered. We are biomedical engineers, mechanical and electrical and mechatronic engineers too, kind of the whole gamut. Doctors, clinicians. Notice I added lawyers there. So I think that was an interesting part too. There are some administrators and PR specialists, right? The kind of full gamut. You need all of these support functions in order to be able to make designs and to get those shared with the world. So we've come together and we've reached a critical mass such that Cosmic as an organization continues. Well, this is kind of what it looks like. I made this analysis by pulling the messages off Slack and connections. So this is really like our actual organizational structure. It looks very different than the kind of top-down hierarchical organizational structure that you would normally see depicted at formal organizations. And that's because we are fundamentally this complex network connecting up in different ways. And that's what's enabling this collaboration. That's what's enabling the communication. And fundamentally, that's what's making our designs come to life. So how is Cosmic different from traditional businesses? Traditional businesses are focused on these kind of 20% of problems that are big enough that people can afford to pay for them. When we're looking, there are all these other problems in the world for which the solutions are not easily funded because they only hit a certain amount of people. Maybe they only affect 1% of people. Maybe they only affect 10 people in the whole world. And yet the information technologies that we have today, the internet, enable new types with super rare diseases are able to use the internet to connect with like-minded people and provide solutions to them. So I've pulled these few slides from dev4x.com. There's a wonderful article on open social innovation. And the big idea is that Cosmic is a network of collaborators, but we're also part of a larger open source community. And rather than the closed innovation process, which is very controlled, and you need to fund the contributors' salaries because they're only working on your project, Cosmic is more this idea that people come and they make contributions like Wikipedia, but people also come and they can use the designs. And we're leveraging open source technologies that we can stack together in new ways to create new technologies. So we're on the bottom here with this open innovation. And that creates this rapid evolution of ideas. We saw a really rapid evolution over these past months at Cosmic, and it's amazing to be in that environment and to see. Yeah, and then each of these technologies, once released and once in the world, also becomes kind of a new brick, a new innovation that then people can kind of stack together in these new configurations to create new technologies. Yeah, recombine, localize, adapt. And that's so essential in the age of COVID, when supply chains are limited, when access to global markets may be limited, or access to traditional medical supplies is limited. This is really, I think, what everyone is doing. They're saying, well, we have automotive factories. Those automotive factories have good control processes for producing cars. Could we adapt and make them produce ventilators? And then share that ventilator design. And then this slide here is sort of about how the economics, more like how the economics could work. I think this is an interesting idea because we're at this point also, we're still funded and run by donations and volunteers. So volunteers donating time, funders donating money that we can use to buy materials and space. I think this represents maybe an alternative method. And if anyone is familiar with Git or version control, this idea that you can take an existing repository somewhere, sort of pay tokens to use that idea, improve it, and then re-merge your idea. So, I borrow some now, I improve upon that, and I give back to the people that I borrowed from. We're all building upon the technologies and the platforms that others have created before us. I think none of the technologies that we have today would be possible without previously the steam engine and the vacuum transistors, right? And all of it kind of builds up and builds up over time. So just recognizing that. There's this famous comparison of two modes, just another analogy for how Cosmic works. We're more, so the bazaar versus the cathedral. Cosmic is definitely more of the bazaar, but given that biomedical products are complex and require regulatory approval, we have aspects of the cathedral as well. We need to build products that are certified or certifiable. And so looking to the future, we're trying to figure out how to reconcile this idea that kind of anybody can show up at our bazaar within Cosmic and within the global open source community too. Anyone can show up and they can bring their skills, and they can meet with other people, and they can self-select and find how best to contribute. And yet we have to, in the end, build up these like relatively complex devices. And so how can we best enable that process? And so far it's been working quite well. We've been responsive, right? We've just been playing it by ear and adjusting as necessary. For the GVent project, for instance, because it's a ventilator, we've found that we needed to use some of our grant money to hire some experts in risk management and in failure mode and effects analysis, so that we can get a better, so that we can have reports on like how the safety of the device is working. Just to coming back, the bubble helmet, clinical respiratory support. I had these pictures in. I wanted to know now that it's November, right? The landscape for us at Cosmic has shifted significantly. There's this vaccine in the air. That's Dr. Bonnie Henry from BC, and we are in another lockdown phase. But it feels different this time because there's more certainty. We've seen a huge global push towards innovation. And we've seen collaboration between governments, between academia, between open source communities of developers, and also with the private sector, right? Like industrial capital and factories, like I mentioned, car companies. I think that was one of the really interesting, but maybe not so surprising if you appreciate the technology and the process that car manufacturers have, that they would be the ones who could transfer their skills to building ventilators. So we've seen this huge spurt of innovation, and we've seen lots of exciting things. And I wondered, how have your words changed? How have they stayed the same? How are you feeling today in November? Opportunities, yeah, and positivity. I think it's been incredibly energizing working with Cosmic and seeing people week to week coming up with new ideas, prototyping and improving, testing, locking designs down. We're entering a new phase. I'm not sure what NOSI means, but we're entering a new phase at Cosmic where some of our projects are, the bubble helmet just published in IEEE's biomedical journal. And they're looking towards partnering with a manufacturer because we don't have that manufacturer capacity. And so we're figuring out we're figuring out how can we do that? How do we partner with those organizations, and what kind of contracts do we need to create with them? How can we create contracts with a manufacturer in Canada, say, in a way that enables that manufacturer to produce the products that they need, that they want to make, but also that doesn't allow them to charge exorbitant fees for those products, right? Our whole mission is delivering accessible medical devices. And so if and when we partner with manufacturers, we need to ensure that they are manufacturing kind of at accessible prices, and not jacking up taking our IP and our innovations and jacking up the price because they can't, because they have an exclusive license. Great. Well, thank you for sharing all of those. Marcus Orlovsky, I really like your point about the energy and kind of wishing that the immediacy of the response to COVID could be matched in these other really crucial domains.
I mean, I don't think anybody ever thought there'd be lockdown. Can you really shut down global economy because of COVID? Well, climate change is pretty damn important, and we're not doing that much.
It's a really challenging one. It's something that is so close to my heart, and I think that in a lot of ways, my involvement as executive director at Cosmic has been an interest in how could we take what we've done here in biomedical engineering, how could we generalize it to provide abundant access to quality of life without creating those negative effects in the production processes, in the waste that we're producing. Yeah, and it's a really interesting and challenging.
It's inspiring
question.
to see how this open source and the way in which you put it forward to us by way of the blocks, which is almost like blockchain, is so fundamentally different from the desire for people to capture elements, patent them, and then exploit them. It seems that maybe we've got you've shown us a way of dealing with the next problem, which we're all putting our heads in the sand because people aren't dying left, right, and center. Well, they are, but it's taking longer.
Yeah, and they are, and it's this challenge of how do we connect across the world? How can the people who have the most and who have the skills and the capacity to design connect, empathize with, and really volunteer what they know to give back to the world. But then also, how can we sustain that, right? And how can we sustain that for ourselves? How can we sustain volunteer interest when shiny things are popping up in other places? And maintaining, or at least sharing, the process by which we've created the innovation. So that was my presentation about Cosmic and the process and what we've been working on. I did want to open it up to questions. I guess we could jump straight into the first question that was posed, which was about legalities and waivers and licensing legalities and waivers, I think, are all really closely tied together. And this was a problem that we ran into very early on. And we got a lot of pro bono legal advice that helped us considerably in understanding what is a pretty complex landscape. But the idea is, if you create intellectual property and want to give it away for free, what are you attaching to that? So the people who take it, what do they have to do? Do they have to do anything? If not, there's a license for that. Do they have to share it? Do they have to keep your name on it? Do they have to, are they allowed to sell? Are they allowed to make small changes or adjustments to your work and then sell that to people? And if so, do they have to share the changes back to you, right? There's the share alike license. And so there's all these different licenses, and the complexity of those licenses is also hindering kind of the ability to share, because companies have to do large reviews of sort of, okay, we want to build a product and we want to use open source technology, but there's, we're using 100 libraries and they all have a different variation of the license. So now we have to do a large legal review. And I think that's going to be one of the big enablers is, can we come up with a shared license that a lot of projects use so that it becomes easier to take a brick, use it in a project, put it out, somebody else can then use that as a new brick, right? But that's still definitely in development. We did have to create legal entities in order to accept donations and funds. And so early on in the process, we had to do a kind of working with lawyers again to say, a lot of the contributors are engineers or doctors. How can we shield them from liability when we're sharing designs freely that we have done our best to work on? But if someone picks up that design file, builds a device, and then causes harm, whether or not it was from the device or from the design matters. And it matters that the doctors and engineers that have done good work here aren't getting kind of pinned with lawsuits in the future in ways that I think aren't what we were intending. So how can we sort of maintain that we're doing our best job in the design work, but also distancing ourselves from liability, because that was important to some of the doctors and clinicians that were working on projects and contributing, so that they don't get disbarred. And I think it was an interesting, challenging question. Typically what happens with the medical device world is that the company that is creating the device is also controlling the manufacturing process. and they're certifying the whole thing from start to finish. We were looking at, can we modularize that more so that we can have more of this adaptive kind of brick-based approach where people are able to like stack together different innovation bricks. And so then the legal implications of, say, negligence or the harm that is caused, it becomes a trickier question because you aren't start to finish making the whole thing yourself. So I hope that answers some of your questions, but there have been significant legal implications to the technology. And the legal implications are tied to social realities.
Isn't that also like the Achilles heel of open source technology itself? Getting the liability to the right source and make that, you know, sustainable. And have you tackled it, by the way, for this? I mean, is there a solution that you found?
Have we found a solution to the licensing or to the? Yeah, so we ended up going with the Apache 3.0 license for the software. For the hardware, I think we're using the CERN licenses, but it was really it's a balancing solution. It's looking at, and you know, I'll be really open about this too. We've also pursued for some of the projects where there is IP, we've pursued patents just to keep that option open if that's what allows us to create abundant access. Because the hypothesis that the open source method, you know, and we've shared, this is the thing, is we've shared all of the IP openly after we got provisional patents on like one or two of the ideas. But if we have to go to a manufacturer and say, well, we do have a patent, it's also shared and open, just so you know that. But we would work closely with this manufacturer to get them having ISO or the IEC, like these kind of regulatory approvals for medical use cases. We would work closely with you to get this done. Then I think it's about that relationship. It's about building that relationship between the design and the manufacturing. And it's less about the actual intellectual property regime that is like on paper protecting the idea than it's about that we are working with this manufacturer. Right now, we're trying to work with any manufacturers because we don't have factory capacity, basically. So we necessarily have to find partnerships, and that puts us in a position of sort of accepting offers, but trying to do that in a way that enables our designs to be in use.
Patrick, I'm in awe that what you've developed and you're putting this open source, and I have to think a lot about what that actually means and all these implications. While all the other companies in that space are raising high walls of IP just to secure the business models.
Yeah.
What is the best and what is the worst case scenario for you guys in that realm of being the guys who are open sourcing what all the others would secure?
There's a presentation I came across again the other day that is a popular one in the open source community, and the presenter, I'm forgetting his name, uses an analogy. There's a community in Japan that has a shrine that has been around for 1,300 years, and they tried to have it protected by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site. But the thing is, the shrine itself has remained the same. The architecture is based on the same design plans, but the building is built out of wood. And so every 100 years, 50 or 100 years, they tear down the building, they go out into the forest where the original wood was from, they take the wood and they rebuild the shrine by the same design plans, right? And they went to UNESCO, and UNESCO said, well, that's not really what we mean. Like, it's sure the same shrine has been there, but the wood isn't 1,300 years old. And so he uses this term. What they were looking for was solidity of edifice, not solidity of process. So what they wanted was a building that would last 1,300 years, right? Rather than a process that is renewable and sustainable and would keep creating the building. And I use this to kind of draw an analogy. I feel that the sort of worst case scenario is that Cosmic leaves our designs online and becomes unsustainable to the initial group that formed. But I also see that Cosmic is kind of like, it's very close to me. It's our community. It's like, our part, but we're also a part of a wider network, a wider sort of like inter-organizational network of open source communities that are doing really similar things. And so even putting up the organizational walls around Cosmic and saying, this is Cosmic, the rest is the open source world around us, is kind of like trying to preserve that edifice, as opposed to preserving the process, right? Our contributors could go and contribute to other open source projects, and I view that as a success. It just, it doesn't show on like Cosmic's metrics, right? And so I think this is one of the challenges that we face, is feeling tied to the kind of walled organization model. And also recognizing that we work best in kind of small to medium-sized, like Dunbar number communities. And so you do need to build relationships with the people that you are working with, and that those relationships enable the output in a lot of ways. So combining that. Yeah, basically, I think the worst risk is that Cosmic fades, but other open source projects pick up the slack.
Thank you. Any other questions? Anyone? Just unmute yourselves, or if you're unmuted already, let me just maybe stop screen sharing.
Well, it's very interesting what you're just saying, and I'm feeling a bit of an ego issue there, right? We want Cosmic Medical to sustain and to be there for a long time to do the things and the great things that they're doing. But on the other hand, it's not about the Cosmic Medical label. It's about the solution you're providing with each other and the network you're providing, right? So how can we manage to, and I think that's an issue with open source in greater scale. I've been working in the music industry with the same kind of problems like that, right? People, they want to share their music, but they're like, well, yeah, well, it is my music, so I want some sort of credit for it, right? Right? It's like this little ego thing that keeps hunting us. But it's interesting how you manage to then as well create a surrounding where this system can withhold in without a monetized business model, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's talk about that for a bit. Our contributors, of whom I'm one, right? There's two really important forces that I see. One is that people really want to work on important, like world-changing, impactful work. And so Cosmic is a vehicle for that. People come and they show up because they want to work on those things, and that's something we've been leveraging, right? That's something that's almost why Cosmic exists, is to be an organization where people can work on impactful medical equipment and then give it away for free rather than licensing it for pay. I see that as being kind of what is you mentioned an Achilles heel, but the sort of like yin yang, like the counter force to wanting to do those good things is wanting to serve, like wanting to do well for yourself. And so this has been something is people, and our contributors included, and myself too, can only sustain like volunteer work for some amount of time, right? Can only sustain like daily volunteer work for some amount of time. And so we have to decide, do we eventually start to like incentivize, or how do we get the kind of nutrients and resources to our contributors in our network? How can we shield them, you know, or how can we provide to them the nutrients that they need, right? In terms of like rent money, or you know, vacation money, or like food access, if we aren't paying them, right? So that's on one side. And if we're not doing that, then we have to be okay with constant churn. And if we're accepting constant churn in the organization, we have to have a really good process for like bringing new members up to speed to the point that they can make the contributions that they want to make. And so I've been interested in this idea, but I think we haven't gotten really good at it, of how can we turn like a complex task, like the design of a ventilator or the design of an automobile, into a bite-sized task that somebody can do a tiny element of this huge complex process. And could that still work, or will that work? Because I think for now, especially with our most complex project, which is the ventilator design, we've been kind of pushed into the pathway of we need to maintain continuity on the process, because there's a lot to know. And so in order to design effectively, in order to write effective code, it's less about, but I still really wonder, I think that that's something I'm really interested in, is could we turn it into bite-sized chunks? Like, could you take complex tasks and turn them into almost trivially simple tasks? But then I think maybe we would run into the fact that like the transformation from a complex task to very simple tasks is the very complex task, becomes a very complex task. So we've been playing it by ear. We've been responding, and we're not too dogmatic about, we're trying to not be too dogmatic, right? We have this rationale, we have this like reason for existing, and we think that open source is the method by which we can achieve that mission. But we have to keep reading the situation.
Gosh.
That open source can, you know, if you just recall that slide with the kind of 80-20 rule, the Microsofts of the world can solve the 20% of big problems that are causing most of the consequences for most of the people, but they can't solve the long tail. And so only the like Linux, that's what the bizarre model kind of represents. That's what Cosmic also represents, can get to this longer tail.